all of a sudden they were just liberated and able to find this stuff on their own.
What about working with an AI as a product manager?
SQL, when it gets complicated, is really complicated. They should be able to leverage AI the same way as companies like Google that are AI companies.
Hey folks, today we have an amazing guest. We have Adam Conway, Chief Product Officer at Databricks. We are super happy to have you with us. And of course, we have my favorite co-host, Quinton.
Hi folks.
And we want just to ask you like very basic question. Can you tell us more about your job and your main responsibility?
Yeah, and first of all, I'll say thanks for having me, Quentin and Yusuf. This is great. It's going to be fun to talk about this. So my job, running kind of product management for a company is, especially a company like Databricks size, is pretty awesome. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But I'll also say that Databricks is an unusual company in a good way, and that's that we have a founder CEO who is really the CPO, which is actually like a really nice thing to have, where I have this person who's my manager, been here since the beginning, has all the context, has a strong vision for the company, who's really has that kind of, I would say, classic CPO role, as well as a CEO role, and I'm there to make him very successful, and also be a sounding board and all those things, and manage the product management team. So it's a pretty awesome setup, and I think many successful companies have this setup where you look at places like DoorDash and Airbnb and Facebook and other places, or Meta, I'm sorry, companies like this. This is kind of the structure of the company where you have this remarkable founder who really leads kind of all aspects of the company, but is very product focused. So that's I think that's like one of the secret sauces of Databricks. Now you ask kind of what is CPO? So what is CPO? It's many things. Of course, managing the product management team is very important. Being involved in the company strategy, really, and product strategy, making sure that that's done properly. Also making sure that sort of the apparatus of how do we build products at Databricks is kind of working properly. So, are people talking to customers, getting feedback, understanding what their needs are, synthesizing that, and then working with engineering to make sure that that product gets delivered? Are they communicating it properly with the rest of the organization? So there's kind of the structure that happens in product management, especially at a product management team of our size. You really need to make sure that that gets run properly. And then finally, there's of course hiring. Product managers are so critical to a company. A good product manager can have a huge impact on a product, make their engineering team much more efficient, get the product out to market faster, all those kinds of things. So the product manager has such a huge impact that hiring extremely well becomes critical. And even one product manager that's struggling can have a really negative impact on the organization as well. So making sure that you're getting people that can operate within the Databricks environment.
So how is it working at a high level? So we talk about the CEO being kind of the CPO. So
Yes.
I assume he's like sharing the vision. That's where we think the market is going. That's what we should be doing. And then you distill the information through the PM, and the PM, build the actual, design the actual implementation, and it goes up. Is it kind of an up and down cycle like that?
Yeah, and maybe we can talk a little bit about kind of the difference between what comes tops down and what comes bottoms up in an organization like Databricks. There are certain things that must come from the team themselves. You have to empower teams to be able to do their own research, to have their own hypotheses, to validate those hypotheses, to gather data, to kind of understand the roadmaps and build the roadmaps. Otherwise, everything gets blocked on one person. So you can't of course have that. And people don't like being micromanaged to that degree also. So you got to give some agency. But our company we build a unified product, which by the way, a lot of companies don't. So maybe I should stop there for a minute and say, in enterprise, there are companies that build unified products and there's companies that don't. And if you look at like the cloud providers, that's an example of like a very distributed setup, like where you have general managers, they make their own decisions, they have hundreds of products. Those products may not work well together. They may work excellent together and may not work well together, but there's no mandate that they work well together. And anybody that's used like one of the cloud products, this is like very obvious. Like there may be some, base level compatibility with things like in Amazon and EC2 or storage, compute, security, but that's really it. That's really the limitation of the integration. At a company like Databricks, it should feel like a single product. It should feel like you're coming in, and even though you might be using a data warehouse, or you might be doing data science, or you might be using a vector database, it feels like a single product and a single coherent experience. And in order for that to occur, you've got to have like a pretty strong tops-down mandate of like how unification is going to work. You've really got to have a vision for how unification is going to happen. And then you have to implement a strategy to make sure that happens, and also organize the org chart so that it happens. I mean, that's actually another complexity, is if you separate the org chart and have like two GMs that are competing with each other, then there's going to be a bifurcation in the product. By the way, this is called Conway's Law, not named after
Yep.
me. But every time somebody says Conway's Law at Databricks, they stare at me, even though I'm not that Conway. But that's like another piece. Is like you got to avoid the org chart complexity there as well. But so what happens? We have we're a tops-down kind of unification vision strategy on how we achieve that. The teams individually operate within that structure and build roadmaps, create potentially new products, do those sorts of things within that environment. And we just basically have lots of checks and balances. I shouldn't say checks and balances, that's not the right word. We spend a lot of time kind of aligning on making sure that these new products, these new capabilities work within that structure. So I guess maybe you said it right, Quinn. You said, does it go back and forth? It does go back and forth. But that's basically how we kind of structure the org.
From what I've seen, working at Databricks, I think people underestimate the complexity of having everything working together and building like a unified product. And I do think it's the main value of Databricks, because when you think about it, you can almost take every single feature of Databricks and you will find something doing it somewhere. But the value is really putting everything together and just putting the governance on top of everything.
Yeah.
I totally get it. How many PMs do we have roughly at Databricks? What's the team size?
About 100. We have about 100 PMs.
Yeah, so you need a 100 PM to work together.
Yeah, exactly.
And since you mentioned one of your mission is to hire PMs, what skills are you expecting from a PM?
Yeah. So maybe I'll talk about skills, but there's also things, we also hire product managers out of college. So they have almost zero skills coming out of college. We have an APM, it's called an APM program, Associate Product Management Program. So I'll talk first about the core capabilities. To be a product manager, I think there's some pretty core things that have to be true about yourself. It's a hard job. It's a lot of work. So you've got to be able to work very hard. You've got to be smart, be able to think from first principles. If you don't, the tech lead who's next to you and might have an IQ of 150 or might be a genius type person will not respect your opinions in that way. So you've got to just be very clear, very, very much able to kind of have those conversations. You have to be very humble. One of the challenges of product management is that even though, product managers paired up with the tech lead, they work together and make decisions, really drive that product. It's kind of on the product manager to make that relationship work. Product managers are often that connective tissue between the field, between marketing, between the customer and engineering. So you've really got to sort of be this person that's very humble, willing to listen to people, but also, sort of make your point. Finally, you've got to be able to write. Writing is really a critical capability because it's often the way that you are, you're sort of memorializing the opinions and the feedback from customers and all of this stuff. And if you write very clearly, very succinctly, that's like the most important communication medium you have as a product manager. So those are kind of core capabilities. Now, becoming like an excellent product manager, it's a long journey. You've got to be able to do, because there's so many skills that you need. And you sort of have to be you're sort of like the Renaissance person of the company as a product manager, because you've got to be able to work very closely with customers and interview them very well to extract like exactly what their problems are, what their jobs to be done are, is what we often talk about now. You have to be able to do that. You have to be able to synthesize that very clearly, build hypotheses, prove those hypotheses out. Finally, you have to be able to put that definition into the product. You've got to have a lot of product sense about how do you release that product, how do you introduce it to market. You have to then market it, communicate it to the rest of the organization. You have to spend time, talking with the field, talking with SAs, talking with customers, and then do messaging, all the marketing, all of those sorts of things. You also need to be pretty good at financial planning. You've got to be pretty good at. So you have to have all these. There's many. Skilled product manager, actually, I'll say a product manager that's been doing it for a long time, often can do the function of the neighboring teams. Like they can be a pretty good product marketer, they can be a pretty good financial modeler, they can be a pretty good SA even. They can like kind of pinch hit for an SA. Maybe not quite as good as most SAs, but you could pinch hit for one. You can. Help close a customer for a certain deal on their product. So you have to have like all of those skills, which is, I think that's the joy of product management, right? Is that you get to constantly learn new things and new ways of doing things. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like that's a lot. Would you say as a product manager, you need to have like a strong opinion on things and really, kind of knowing the market and have a feeling of where it's going? Or is it more like, okay, like it doesn't really matter if I have an opinion because anyway, I have to figure out from the customer and just, get the information from the like the one who are going to use the platform? What do you think?
I mean, you have to have a strong opinion, but rooted in evidence. What does that mean? You have to talk to customers all the time, and not just have a chat with them, but you have to sort of really understand their needs. There's this thing called the 5 Whys. It was part of the Toyota, system that they had. I forgot what it's called now, but where you basically have to keep on asking why to understand why a customer wants something. Because what a customer is going to say to you is, I have this problem right now. It's like, please fix it for me. I need this button. I need a knob. I need something. But oftentimes that's the thing. They're speaking to you in what they know is possible and what they need right now. But anytime you start developing something, it might take you a year to develop this thing. In a year, what's that need going to be? You're also going to know, like, is there some underlying problem which you can just make go away? Like if they're asking for a knob, maybe you can just eliminate the need for a knob for that forever by changing the way you build the platform. So really understanding the problem behind the problem, or what people call the jobs to be done, is really a critical part of pulling information kind of out of folks. So that's a core part of this research. So talking to customers is really, really important. Also looking at data is important. And I'll say there's kind of a different emphasis. The product management's kind of split in two. There's consumer PMs and there's enterprise PMs. I'm an enterprise PM. In enterprise PMs, it really focuses around many, many, many customer conversations. like kind of, you should be interviewing 2 customers a day, pretty much every day for your entire career.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And that's kind of the key. And then doing some data, because data is a supporting part. In consumer, it's actually kind of flipped. It's like mostly data with a few like customer inputs, but the customer inputs are strange. You have to do more like panels. You might have another organization that does user research. You might have those kinds of things. So it's a little bit more separated from the individual customers. And the reason for that is that in consumer, any given customer is like 1/1 billionth of your revenue opportunity. Whereas in enterprise, a large customer can be a significant amount of revenue. You might only need a few hundred big customers to become a pretty big enterprise. And you can interview several hundred customers. That's not difficult. I mean, over the course of years and with multiple product managers, you can have regular touch points with hundreds of customers. So it gives you a very good view into exactly what your customers need and prospective customers. By the way, that's also important. Sometimes you need to talk to customers that aren't buying your product. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I have like the $1 million question. We know that Databricks have built many successful like features, but what's the secret sauce like behind building those products? And we can see an example, it's like how Unity Catalog started, and then it was integrated in so many features, like having to do those cross meetings with so many like ML team, feature store team, DLT, and so on. So what's the secret behind this success?
It's like all things. It's like the secret is just like a lot of hard work and a lot of good thinking. So it's not a secret so much. It's just a lot of companies, I think, struggle. They struggle to keep the discipline of doing this. So let me speak about this kind of specifically. If you have a disciplined product management organization that has an extremely strong set of evidence around what customers need, not only that, but you've actually done the other research to really know kind of what the jobs to be done behind those evidence are. You now have a very rich resource which you can use to make decisions. Secondly, you can look at kind of what problems have to be solved kind of writ large in the market. Maybe people aren't asking for something like Unity Catalog, which, by the way, nobody was asking for Unity Catalog. They were asking for catalog improvements, but they were not asking for Unity Catalog. They're asking for governance, like I need row-based, or I need what's called column and row-based controls on the data. They need a very specific set of things, and we had a lot of research on all of these things. It was really sort of I think taking all of that feedback and be able to synthesize it into something very special kind of required somebody to really understand where the market is going. And by the way, we had some pretty amazing people working on that. People like, Matei worked on it himself. One of our, most senior kind of distinguished engineers was working on it. One of our most senior product leaders was working on it. And kind of together, they really spent a lot of time figuring out where the market was going, understanding what was needed. And then I think also taking advantage of the inherent advantages that Databricks had. Databricks had some core advantages before Unity Catalog was built. One was we did both data and AI at the same time. So we had this very clear, we understood that this problem spanned multiple kinds of workloads. And then the second thing was we were data lake only, which was kind of an unsolved problem at that time. Like, how do you govern files and tables in the same way? So there's just these very basic building blocks that we had because of the growth of the company, where we had sort of an advantage in our thinking and our product that kind of led to us building that. And by the way, I think, we're talking about Unity Catalog. Many people listening to this might not understand the importance of Unity Catalog. Unity Catalog is even though it's not like we don't charge for it independently, it is, it's part of the product, it's part of the platform itself. It is, over and over again, customers tell me it's our best product. Like, it's the best thing we've ever done. It just simplifies so many different ways you do things. And basically, it provides a central place to find, govern, manage all of your data assets all up. And that means like AI models to tables to files to environments to other things that are out there. It's the core of how you do CI/CD on Databricks. It's the core of all of the AI capabilities. And actually, it's probably maybe the most important piece is all the AI capabilities we have utilize Unity Catalog as kind of a backing store to evaluate things. So, all right, that's a long answer and a meandering answer, but hopefully that's cover everything you're saying.
So you mentioned all the like customer meetings to get the feedback and asking many questions to really understand what they need. But once you have this information and maybe you think about a product you should be building or maybe improving something, adding features, how do you go into deciding what to put as a priority and what to build first? Because I guess you have a balance of maybe potentially existing big customer and you can kind of track revenue out of it, but you would also have potentially features you want to do for like a market you want to conquer. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to be a big successful company, you have to think long term all the time.
And like at the risk of, because I guess if you have like a big customer, they ask you something and you're like, hey, no, you know what, we won't do it because we don't think whatever the reason, that's what we want to do. Oosh.
Yeah, I mean, that's, yes, like, of course you try and meet the needs of big customers, but many companies get trapped in this environment where they're constantly building features for big customers and they sort of never get real product market fit where the product takes off on its own. Now you're kind of stuck in this mode of being, sort of building custom products for all of your big customers. And I think that's a trap that many enterprise companies find themselves in. If you want to build like an amazing product for the future, it's not going to come because you have big customers asking you for a bunch of security features or a bunch of things like that. You're going to become a great company in the long term because you build phenomenal products that people love, that are consistent across all customers. And I think that's like the most important thing. So if you're constantly thinking long term about what you're building, it allows you to do that. Now, of course, you carve out some time for a short term, like I need to like solve a set of problems. Of course you do. But I think over time, if you'll regret some of those short term things, like maybe customer can wait 6 more months and you can do it right. They'll be happier and the rest of your customers will be happier. And but I think, we've all seen this at Databricks. Right? Customer needs something. Instead of doing this quick expedient thing, we do the long-term thing. By the way, Unity Catalog was another example of this. Some of the asks we had around, things like column masking and things like that. It ended up taking us years to respond to that. But when we did it so well that customers just adore Databricks for it. And that's I think it's just a better way of operating. It's much better to build workarounds. By the way, it's much better to have like a phenomenal field engineering team that can also kind of help build those workarounds within those customers, so that they can sort of, and by the way, they then bear the pain of these customers. But if they can like solve the problem without having to affect product, it gives us, some time to actually do it properly in the product. That's just amazing. That sort of gets you, that allows you to sort of live in this world of building the future, rather than, again, sort of like that problem of like dealing with current needs, which basically means you're dealing with the past by the time you get it done. So it allows you to, like I said, innovate in a way that you wouldn't otherwise be able to.
And I remember when I first heard about Databricks back in 2017, we had this title like making big data simple. Like since like for the last 3 years, I keep hearing making the product simple, accessible. And I want to know, like, what's the definition of simple in a product development? Because I know it's like, yeah, I'm building a simple product, but what's the key of having this success behind this simple? Like, because I know it's like short word, but it means a lot behind.
Yeah. I think it's sometimes simplicity is like it's like a very difficult to understand term. And I think sometimes simplicity means not capable. Sometimes, but that's not good. You don't want that end of it, especially in a product like Databricks. It can mean, a lot of things. So I think, it should be like in a product like Databricks, which is, where we serve, data practitioners. Sometimes people are, pretty hardcore data practitioners, writing code, building data pipelines, that kind of stuff, all the way up to business users who do not understand SQL. Basically their knowledge sort of ends at a spreadsheet. Like how do you serve kind of that class of people, that huge group of people? And I'll say there's a few things, but there's a few things that are universal, even when you're looking at that kind of range of problem, which is basically the problem that Databricks is trying to solve. And that is, the fewer concepts you have, the better off you are. So, and by this is the beauty of unification, is that the concepts get dramatically reduced. And I'll say that unification is extremely hard, but this is where the value really pays off. It's having one place where you do governance, which we keep on talking about governance, but governance is often the area that adds so much complexity. And actually, it's probably the greatest complexity generator of any system out there. Having one set of concepts there means that people, if you start, writing SQL and you're using the data warehouse and you're seeing how things are working, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to go write a Python notebook, and everything is the same. All the concepts are identical, except for the Python itself. Then it dramatically simplifies the platform. So one is kind of reducing concepts. And by the way, this also means knobs and things like this, reduce the number of settings. Most settings are just not necessary. If you really think about, except for dark mode, everybody knows that's like the most important setting you have to have in a product. If you can reduce those number of settings down to near zero, then you're in a much better state. But that's hard in the enterprise because what customers want is they want more settings, but they all want different settings. So then you'll end up with like this huge proliferation of settings. So that's like a very hard condensing problem. Second thing, which by the way, I don't think people think about a lot, is standards. You're allowed to do things that are hard if it's just standard across the industry. And I'll give you a great example of this, which is Spark. Everybody that does data at scale knows what Spark is. If you're doing data processing, you know PySpark, or the Scala API, or Spark SQL, or Sparkly R. You know one of these APIs. Those APIs are not simple. They can do, PySpark can do many, many things. It's a very, very powerful system. But it's a standard, so if you learn it, you can learn it in school. So if you adopt standards, or even better yet, build standards that get adopted by the whole industry, then that's simplicity. I mean, that means that everybody is willing to learn it and use it. So I think those are the ways that I think we think of simplicity. It's like unifying concepts, so reduce concepts, reduce settings as much as possible, which is always a hard challenge. And then finally, it's like adopt standards and make that work well. I'll maybe make one other comment. You have to use the product all the time. Your product management team, your SA team, your engineering team, you got to just like build systems within the company to make people use the product over and over and over and again, and then measure how they use it and make sure it gets better over time. We do this through something called CUJs, but companies have many different mechanisms for this. But it's kind of this idea of like, you got to dog food the product. You got to use it every day. You got to make sure that that happens. And then record all those issues that people have and work on them. And maybe I should have mentioned that first, because that's maybe the most important thing. But that's like a pretty awesome kind of mechanism within a company that makes things just much, much easier to use.
Yeah, and I feel like measuring, like it's really hard for me to measure. For example, we do demos. It's really hard for me to measure if the demo is simple or not simple, because once you do it and you know everything about the product, sure, you know how it's working. But like having someone that you take, being brand new in the, like whatever you do and making him try, see if it's working, see if it's simple. I think that's a really good way to measure simplicity.
Yeah, that's like a little. That's good that you brought that up. There's this trick that we pull at Databricks where every new employee, assuming every new employee has to basically go through and use the product and achieve some goal in the product, and then provide feedback to us. That's like their week one task, and I'll say it's funny. One of these funny things where sometimes new employees get addicted and they'll like say, "Oh, that was fun," and they ask for another one, and they'll do like 6 of these like journeys across the product in their first like few weeks, and then they'll know everything about how Databricks works. And they'll know where the good is, they'll know where the bad is, they'll know where the problems are. They'll feel motivated to improve them. They become very happy employees. We recently hired a new director in UX, and she'd never. She'd like never been in the data platform space. That was like not her. I mean, she understood data. She had some basic, understanding of data. And I think she did 5 of these in her first few weeks at Databricks, and was just like addicted. And that was great. And that's like an amazing outcome for a project like that. So.
All right. So I wanted to do like a small segue and talk a bit about AI, because AI is everywhere nowadays. So I guess we can start by talking about because Databricks is doing a lot of AI product. AI is moving so fast right now. Like if I were like a PM on AI, I would be super scared, because like whatever you want to do this year might be completely outdated, but yet you release the product, it's going to be like you start to have some adoption. Who knows if it's going to be what you actually have to build in a few years. But at the same time, you don't want to miss the innovation train. So you want to make sure you do build something. It seems like almost like super hard to balance. How do you do that? How do you, like, do you wait a little bit and just make sure you go to whatever you think is going to stay? Like, for example, if we take RAG, I guess used to be a big thing last year, and now everybody's talking about agent and agenting stuff. So if you built the RAG stuff last year, well, you kind of missed on the big new thing. So how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things, but I mean, I think one of the luxuries that we have at Databricks, maybe that most companies don't have, is that you can be part of building the future if you have a good AI research team. So I think that's one of the benefits that we have here at Databricks, that most, honestly, as most companies, even companies of our size, don't really have. And I think that's allowed us, and I think the fact that we've been doing AI since day one of the company, which I think is very rare, for it to be at a 11-year-old company that's been doing AI since the very beginning. I think that makes us unusual. So we've always had this DNA. So that's, I think, sort of like, I should just point out that maybe we have like a secular advantage in that way. But I think you have to be willing to just build and throw something out, and build something and throw something out, and sort of like keep on executing, delivering capability, delivering value as quickly as you can. Make sure you're actually delivering value. Make sure customers are using it, that they're willing to adopt it, and then move on. And the beauty is a lot of the core concepts don't change. That's the beauty of it. Is like, even if you look back a couple of years, RAG has existed for most of that time. So a vector database is still part of an agentic system. So we have a very, very good vector database capability. Being prompting has like grown dramatically. And things like DSPy and all these capabilities and the ability to think through, to build those sorts of systems, that's had value over this whole time. So some of these things, the beauty of it is some of these things are changing very rapidly, but some of them are staying the same. And some of the innovations you came up with a year ago still apply. Others, not so much. I mean, certain things matter less now. And so I think that's where you just have to be willing to move fast and throw stuff away if it's not working anymore. And it's a huge investment, but like I said, it's a big business for us, so it's worth it. So I guess there's no trick there. I wish there was a trick, but I think it's like most things, overnight success requires many, many years of hard work. So.
And I feel like no, but what you say makes sense. For example, when you take the evaluation parts, it's something you will need. Like even if the way we build the AI is going to change, like maybe it's going to be new model, new something, you will still need to have some kind of eval to know if it's working, not working. Double done. If we double done also on things like that is going to stay forever. It's also like a good way to add really good value. While having that for long term.
Yeah, actually, thank you. That's also a very good answer. I should have said that. So a lot of the tools and systems that you need to build these systems have actually remained constant. Right? Concepts like guardrails and concepts like evaluation and concepts like a lot of what we call agents today was called stuff like LangChain and stuff like that before. I mean, a lot of those things are similar concepts and similar scaffolding built around the models and other capabilities that carries forward. So yes, as the names have changed and the terms have changed, a lot of the infrastructure is the same, fortunately.
And so we talk about AI in the product. So what about working with an AI as a product manager? Like, do you use really AI when you do product management, other than I would say the basic stuff like summary of meetings and things like that?
Yes, I do. I do use AI. We do, and that's actually a good example. Is summaries of meetings, things like that are very, very important. Also, research is very nice. Things like internally we use things like we use RAG and we use capabilities like that. But it's also a very good way of communicating with the field engineering team as an example. Like now they can utilize systems inside of Databricks to find out, hey, when does X feature ship?
Oh, I see.
You can go ask that question. So that also helps on the communication side. I think there's some things that have not been cracked yet by Gen AI. And I think the first thing that I've seen is I've not seen the kind of writing you do in PM where you write something very succinct, very to the point. It's very pedagogical. It's not quite there from Gen AI yet. So you can't, if you're trying to you can't have Gen AI write PRDs for you. You can't, which is a requirements document. You can't have Gen AI really perfectly capture like what is the most important nugget out of a meeting. But I hope we get there at some point. But we're not there yet. So I think a bunch of those aspects are not quite there. But every year we add new tools to our tool belt with AI, and it's been awesome. We have a project right now trying to kind of pull together more knowledge about our customers in a single place, so that we can ask the question of like, how important is X feature, or who cares about this kind of problem, those kinds of questions, and then also help us figure out like which customers are the best customers to talk to about a specific new feature or things like that. So.
And so what about even getting feedback at scale using Gen AI? Like you mentioned doing, for example, 2 interviews per day, but like it's super time consuming. Could you imagine, or I don't know, is the industry doing some kind of massive survey through Gen AI to get some feedback from the customer?
I think there is some advancements in that area, but I think the core work of product management, which is just sitting down with the customer and understanding their world, empathizing for what their needs are, and I think the key thing, and in most enterprise companies like Databricks, my job as a product manager is different than the customer's job that I'm talking to. They don't have the same role as me. I work in an R&D department. They may or may not work in an R&D department. I have kind of no operational responsibility for like a data pipeline, and that might be their main job. Is like, how is this data pipeline running? I don't want to get a page at 2:00 in the morning. How do I make sure that the data is reliable? That's not. We're just live very different lives, and I need to understand their life and understand what their day looks like, and understand what they go through. And there's not a clear. I don't know. There's a clear way to get that even out of a survey or out of Gen AI, particularly. You sort of have to sit down, face to face via Zoom or face to face in reality, and really understand them. Ask many questions, probe deeper and deeper, see how they work. Understand what they're doing. And I think there's not a Gen AI replacement for that yet that I've seen.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because I had in mind only the getting information, but you're actually also learning from the customer, and I guess you need that discussion to have the learning steps. That makes sense.
Yeah. And also like how it's phrased, because I can say the same sentence, but depending how I pronounce it, it may be different. Like
it's hard to
whether I'm angry or maybe I'm happy, or like those sentiments. I think still the agents cannot understand them.
Yeah, they can't do it perfectly. Yeah, exactly. But I think we get more. I think we've gotten a lot more efficient in product because of Gen AI. That's already happening. I utilize Gen AI 100 times a day, maybe, to do various things in my job or whatever it ends up being, and that's made me much more efficient.
All right, so yeah. I feel like I wanted to ask at the end, if you think that's product management.
Excuse me.
I wanted to ask at the end if product manager is going to be the last job AI will replace. But I guess we have
the answer. I think so. I think
I'll give you. Well, I think one thing about Gen AI, the last thing Gen AI is going to replace is anything you do with your hands, right? And I know we want
wait for the robots to come, but yeah.
Yeah, but I'll say I'm a mechanical engineer. Undergrad, that was what I studied, and I was a mechanical engineer for a few years. And there's no Gen AI tools there. There is generative design. It does exist, and it actually is very, very cool. But it requires you to set all these very rigorous constraints in advance. And then what it produces might not be manufacturable. So there's like this. So I think we're living in this world when you're dealing with code and you're dealing with text. Gen AI is amazing right now. We have another set of evolution before it can do perception and understand more complicated I guess the beauty of text is there's quanta, there's these tokens that are there's only so many of them in the world, and so it significantly shrinks the world's complexity. But in the world of most of these other things, there's not that. So there's a lot of innovation coming in that area, and I think we're all very excited about it. And I think those are probably the last areas to be. I won't say the word disruptive because I don't like that word. I don't think that's kind of the doomsday discussion that everybody has, but I think it's the least augmented jobs today. Nobody's making your job better. I mean, I think we're a long ways off from having a product manager that can be an AI product manager. Just like we're a long ways off from, having a perfect AI developer. What we're seeing right now is all these amazing tools. We're becoming the bionic man or woman in developing code. You have all these augmentations that are making you substantially better. Things like, Cursor is amazing. But our own assistant in the product is shockingly successful, and I'll hop on customer calls and the customer will be upset about something. Maybe we slipped a date or something like that. And then at the end of the call, they'll say, but assistant changed my life. They'll tell me something like that, which is, pretty much every customer that can use assistant is using assistant right now. It's almost like 100%. So it's a pretty amazing like thing that's happening with this kind of augmentation.
Yeah,
And we see it inside Databricks.
just a number of times I was forgetting like a structure of an API. Instead of going like to open the browser, just go to the assistant, say, hey, I need to do this, and then you have like this, and you have the answer quickly.
Oh yeah, I do the same thing. Or like window functions. Who knows how window functions work? I mean, like that's my
Which, by
favorite.
the way, because you mentioned like being simple, you have to be the norm. Like I don't think SQL is simple at all. I just think everybody knows SQL, so it looks simple. But like it's a really good example to the point you were making before.
No, but I agree with that as well. I can write Python and like do all this complicated stuff, but as soon as a SQL query gets complicated, something in my mind breaks. Having the ability to have Gen AI just generate that for me is amazing. But I think we haven't talked about our product very much. But maybe it's kind of worthwhile to just talk a second. Like we have this. We think the future is this thing called data intelligence in our space. And data intelligence is really where Gen AI, democratizes access to data. Because today you have to know Python, you have to know SQL. We just talked about how SQL, when it gets complicated, is really complicated. We see this as like being very core to like democratizing access to data, but also we also see data intelligence as something that's also going to democratize access. The ability for companies to build AI. We want, we don't, our customers are large enterprises. Their main business is not delivering AI systems, but they should be able to leverage AI the same way as companies like Google that are AI companies and be able to kind of operate in that level. And I think we see data intelligence as a way for us to get there. And I think that's like, and I think so in our world, I think this is what we see. Like what tools are we getting? Data intelligence is really this thing that we're getting the benefit of and we're putting into our products.
And I think AIBI is the like one of the best examples we can give. Like you can, like I'm not a data analyst. I don't know how to build dashboards, but I just open like the dashboard and start like asking, like putting some prompt, like revenue versus sales, and I have this chart built automatically for me. Do the same thing for all the other charts, and then if my dashboard still not good, I can just open Genie and say, okay, tell me who is the best sales like in my company. And then I have like, instead of having to write this complex SQL queries as Quentin mentioned, you have like just text, hey, Youssef is the best sales. I'm kidding, I'm not the best sales, but you have this answer like done for you. And this is like the best example you can give with AIBI or like this data intelligence.
Yeah, I mean it's just within Databricks, we have this funny thing. Marketing uses AI, uses AIBI all the time, and they're so excited about it because they're all of a sudden have access to all this data they never had access to before. They don't have to send something off to an analyst. They don't have to get a dashboard built. There was a period of time where that's all they wanted to market because they were so excited themselves about it. So it's like this, which is pretty funny. But I think also just shows the power of like, this is a team that had to rely on data analysts in order to get their results, and all of a sudden they were just liberated and able to find this stuff on their own. And it was really kind of a night and day change for that organization. And I think we view that as like this is just the first example of just many of these. And imagine just how much more effective you can be if you don't have to round trip these questions through a human that has to like schedule the time and find the time and may give you the wrong answer or may not ask the question. Maybe ask the question wrong the first time. I mean, I don't know. I think this is amazing.
And I think if I can summarize all this session, first, if you're considering being a product manager in the future, I think this is a recording. This session, this is the one you should be watching, like having some advices. And also, if you want to apply to Databricks, you have some insights like how to prepare your interview. And I truly believe like the last part would be more about AIBI, and I believe Chao and Miranda are going to be happy because we promoted dashboards and Genie at the same time.
Yeah, of course. Well, AIBI, but also I think, the beauty of it is that it's infused throughout. Beauty of unification is you don't just get data intelligence inside of AIBI, but you get it throughout the entire product. Again, this is by going back to unification, is we've looked at every single place where we can make the product dramatically better with AI. And of course, you don't see it anywhere as obvious as you see in AIBI, because it's literally is the interface that you would access as a maybe a non-technical user to get data. So
thank you so much, Adam. It was super exciting call, and thank you for your insights. And looking forward to having you back again.
And maybe next time we'll talk more about the product and
sounds good
for sure.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you so much, Adam.
Great spending time with you, Yusuf and Quentin. Look forward to next time.
Thank you.